right here in Boone County too, huh?
It was just an accident.
Just an accident. All right, our final storyteller in the oral category is Linda Kuntz. I think they must just tell stories back and forth all the time at their house. Welcome, Linda Kuntz from Gladstone, Missouri.
Growing up in Wisconsin meant it started snowing in October and maybe would taper down in May, though it had been known to snow July 4th. Well, I remember one day it had snowed an additional 7 feet of snow. And Mama woke us up that morning and said, "Girls, today is the day. You have entered the snow sculpture contest and you need to get out there and come up with something." Well, we put on every layer of wool clothing we could come up with. We put our feet in bread bags, slipped them into our rubber boots, and we all rolled out the second floor window and made our way to where the front door was, because our first chore was to shovel out a way to get into the front door. And then we were left to play and do whatever we wanted to do the rest of that day. So my sisters and I wanted to make the most spectacular snow sculpture. And being in Wisconsin, of course, we wanted to build a snow sculpture of Paul Bunyan and his Blue Ox Babe. Now, my oldest sister, Jenny, was sent out to keep an eye on us, and she was really, really good at that. And she was going to help us as we planned our sculpture. So at this part of the yard, there was just enough wood of the telephone pole sticking up above the snow that she pointed out that that would be the perfect part of Paul Bunyan's axe handle. And we started working on building our snow sculpture. Now, about that time, the neighbor boy, Mark, came over. Oh, he didn't want to help us with the snow sculpture. He wanted to play. So my sister Carol said, "Well, I know, let's make snowballs and see how many of those icicles we could knock off the roof." So Jenny said, "Go on, you guys can, knock snowballs, or take the snowballs, knock those icicles off." And then Jenny realized that Carol had only knocked off 4, and Mark had knocked off about 31. So she came over and she goes, "Now, let me show you how this is done. You need to make a bigger snowball, and you need to throw that snowball along the line of the eaves, and that way you'll knock off more icicles." And she left them to it. So then Jenny went over to the rest of us as we were trying to figure out just how to pose Paul Bunyan and his hooks. And we were trying to figure out how many ladders we were going to need to make this a life-size sculpture. Well, about that time, Mark and Carol had finished knocking all the icicles off, and they decided, what's next? Let's go sledding. So they were able to just walk onto the garage roof. It was a metal roof, and we had cleared the snow off so it wouldn't collapse, but that metal roof was the perfect sledding chute. So Mark and Carol got their sleds out, and they whizzed down that garage roof, sailed over the buried pear orchard, and they landed right between the ox's feet. So Jenny got them and says, "Oh, now you're getting in the way. Go sledding off the other side of the garage." So they were able to get their sleds untangled from the ox's feet, went back to the garage, and Jenny pointed out that if they went off on that side of the garage, that they would be able to turn at, bank at the snowdrift, and they'd end up at the barn. And so Mark and Carol were sledding in that direction. In the meantime, Jenny was trying to help us do the math of how many packages of blue Kool-Aid we were gonna need to make that ox blue, and how were we gonna sneak in the house and steal the Kool-Aid without Mom noticing? Well, about this time, Carol and Mark realized that down by the barn, the wind had blown all the snow off the ice. And there they could go skating. Well, nobody had skates, but they could slide back and forth. And so Carol and Mark started pushing each other on the ice. And the harder they pushed, the further they went. And they tried to do crack the whip, but it's kind of hard with two people. And so Mark suggested that if Carol pushed him and gave him a super duper push, that he would probably be able to go like all the way to the other side of the pond. So Carol gave him a super duper push, and when she opened her eyes, Mark was gone. Mark had fallen in the hole that some ice fisherman had come and cut a hole in the pond, and Mark had fallen in. So Carol called to help to Jenny, and Jenny, she knew exactly what she needed to do. She got some tow ropes and she snowboarded over to the pond to help Mark. Now, if you've ever been outside with multiple layers of wool, you'll realize wool is very insulating. The air keeps you warm. But another factor of wool clothing is it wicks away the moisture from your body. Well, here was Mark stuck in the pond, and that wool was a wicking, and he was blowing up like a giant marshmallow, and he was kicking his feet underneath the water trying to figure out how to get out. And he was kicking his feet so fast that he was sucking up walleye fish in his boots as he was kicking. Now, Jenny told him, "Hold still, I'm gonna tie this tow rope around you and you'll be just fine." So she tied a double half hitch knot around him. And then Carol and Jenny took the rope back up to the girls, threw it over the axe handle, and said, "Now girls, let's grab a hold of the rope and jump." And so we all grabbed a hold of that rope, and when we jumped and landed, with the force of all 13 girls landing, well, that's a whole nother story. There's not much to do when it's cold. The force of those 13 girls landing popped Mark out of that pond. He went sailing through the air, and he landed smack dab on that ox. And right there, a whole couple of things happened. He landed so hard, all those fish flew out of his boots. And my sisters and I were grabbing those walleyes for dinner later. He landed so hard on the back of that ox that every drop of water from his clothing was expelled. And that water rained down and mixed with that Kool-Aid, and it made that ox the perfect shade of blue. Now about that time, Mama opened the front door and hollered in, "Come on girls, it's time for lunch." So Jenny helped Mark down off the ox, untied him, and of course we invited him in. It's the only neighborly thing to do. We went in and had lunch of grilled Wisconsin cheese and a mug of hot tomato soup. Later after lunch we went out and we were pleasantly surprised to find out that the judging committee had snowmobiled by, looked at our masterpiece, and we won first prize.